What if I told you a single college student armed with AI is cutting through thousands of government regulations that have been strangling efficiency for decades? An AI system identified approximately 1,000 areas where HUD regulations could be simplified or removed. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how AI could free Americans from regulatory prison we've built around ourselves, or whether this is a dangerous experiment with vulnerable lives. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I'm building AI capitalists to talk to the leaders and the thinkers, like you, about navigating this new world of thinking machines. A college student we mentioned named Christopher Sweet has joined Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE team, at the Housing and Urban Development Department, HUD. Sweet, who's on leave from the University of Chicago, where he was studying economics and data science, is working on a project using artificial intelligence to review HUD's regulations. The AI system that Sweet is using analyzes regulations, it then compares them to underlying laws, and then it identifies areas where the rules might be modified or removed. According to internal documents and sources at HUD, Sweet has produced a spreadsheet with approximately 1,000 items where the AI has flagged potential regulatory adjustments, complete with suggested alternative language. Staff members from the Office of Public and Indian Housing are being asked to review these AI-generated recommendations. One HUD employee noted that while using AI for regulatory revision sounds unusual, they appreciated the real people are involved in confirming and making the changes. So after this review process, recommendations are going to be sent to the Office of General Counsel for approval. Sources within HUD claim that this AI model is being prepared for wider use across government agencies. The system reportedly analyzes the code of federal regulations, and then it calculates things like how many words could be removed from individual regulations, and then assigning percentage figures to indicate regulatory compliance issues. Sweet was granted access to HUD's data systems, including the Public and Indian Housing Information Center and Enterprise Income Verification Systems. Now, this AI-driven regulatory review is aligned with the deregulation goals that were outlined in Project 2025, which influenced a lot of the administration's early actions, even though the project itself was supposedly shut down before the election even happened. Sweet's background included setting up an investment firm called East Edge Securities in 2023, and he also worked with a lot of private equity firms. He seems to have been developing these tools to track government regulations before he joined DOGE. He had a GitHub account linked to him that showed an application that analyzes regulatory burden across different government agencies. DOGE representatives working at HUD since February worked with Representative Maxine Waters, criticizing their presence. She claimed that they were accessing sensitive housing data and terminating staff, and this led to a panic where people were afraid that their personal data was being distributed publicly. HUD had no comment on any of this. All right, so what's the buzz about this story on social media? On Twitter, the battle lines couldn't be more clearly drawn. Tech enthusiasts and small government advocates are throwing virtual parades for the bold experiment. One user celebrated it as cutting-edge innovation, finally disrupting bureaucratic bloat. Another one praised the Trump administration for bringing Silicon Valley efficiency up all the way to Washington's regulatory swamp. But government veterans and housing advocates are having collective aneurysms. Policy wonks point out that HUD regulations protect vulnerable populations from homeless veterans to victims of domestic violence. One commenter said, "I know far more about HUD than this fool, and the sentiment that you wouldn't let a third-year med student perform brain surgery, so why let a college kid rewrite housing policy is pervasive." What's funny is that this kid, to my mind, would be considered a tech whiz if he were in any different industry other than slashing regulations. What's really fascinating is that the same facts trigger a completely opposite reaction. When Wired reports that the student created an Excel spreadsheet with around 1,000 rows containing areas of policy where the AI tool has flagged that HUD may have overreached, supporters see data-driven efficiency, and then critics envision algorithmic butchery of carefully crafted protections. Reddit takes us deeper into the technical weeds, and the conversation there gets substantially more nuanced. On the subreddit of technology, users with software development backgrounds are raising red flags about AI's fundamental limitations. One developer shared that our company pushed us not to use Copilot, but it kept suggesting that libraries we don't use and that we can't install. It lacked repository context. Another one responded bluntly that AI doesn't know what it doesn't know, and it won't know what it doesn't know because it's not intelligent. But across the platform, commenters are acknowledging that hybrid human-AI approaches being implemented. Even skeptics noted that agency staffers have been asked to review the AI's recommendation. If they don't agree with those suggestions, they have to justify why. Now, this has created an interesting divide between those who see this as reasonable oversight and other people who view it as forcing career experts to justify themselves to a machine, and by extension to political appointees. And the urban planning subreddit took a particularly dim view. One commenter explained that refinement of regulations must be done with expertise and broad agreement by stakeholders, not just vibes by someone who has no understanding of anything, it seems. Now, LinkedIn's comments reflect a more restrained corporate enthusiasm. Business-minded users see this as a bold experiment in government efficiency, but some of them praise the entrepreneurial spirit of bringing startup methodologies to federal operations. One side represents a future where AI empowers smaller or more agile government teams to accomplish more with less. The other side warns of algorithmic governance designed by those with little understanding of regulatory purpose. This social media debate isn't just about one college kid and his AI project. It's exposing some fundamental questions about governance in the AI age. What would happen if we applied this approach to FDA drug approvals? Would an AI scanning drug trial data decide that certain safety protocols are regulatory overreach? And might they be? Or think of financial regulations. One academic study shared on social media pointed out that eliminating AI safeguards can increase uncertainty for financial institutions, and in a worst-case scenario, could increase the risk of systemic collapse. So a lot of fear. As one Redditor put it, their master plan, if it's not obvious, is to replace people in government with AI, controlled naturally by billionaires. So it's sort of like the replacement theory on the right, but for the bureaucracy instead. Architects and government workers who are actually in regulatory roles are raising practical concerns. One person pointed out that building codes are a rat's nest of exceptions and specify that an AI is going to drop the ball on it. Another one noted that HUD regulations underwent a multi-year, multi-stakeholder meat grinder before any rule was ever created. So the real irony is that while we're debating whether AI can properly interpret housing regulations, HUD just released guidance on the applicability of the Fair Housing Act to tenant screening and housing-related advertising that relies on algorithms and AI. The regulators are being regulated by the technology that they're trying to regulate. And if that doesn't capture the bizarre circularity of our current moment, then nothing does. So what's the AI capitalist take on this? What we're witnessing is a fascinating collision of pattern recognition systems. On the one side, we have organic, evolved bureaucracy called HUD, which is a massive, multi-decade accumulation of regulations. Each of them was added for some purpose, noble or otherwise, that created a very complicated ecosystem that nobody fully understands. It's beyond human comprehension. On the other side, we have an AI trained to detect patterns in regulatory language, coupled with a young quant guy who probably thinks most of government is inefficient blow. Otherwise, he wouldn't have joined Doge in the first place. From an epistemological perspective, it raises profound questions about how we validate knowledge claims in governance. The existing regulatory framework emerged through human deliberation, through stakeholder input, and through political compromise. It's messy, it's slow, but it incorporates diverse perspectives. The AI approach represents a fundamentally different epistemology. Algorithmic, pattern-based, and potentially divorced from the human experiences that these regulations impact. When an AI flags overreach, what truth framework is it using? Pure textual comparison to enabling legislation, or some deeper understanding of the regulatory purpose? Now, we also have to look at the anthropology of this. The story is revealing competing views of human nature at work. The traditional regulatory approach assumes that humans need comprehensive rules to prevent exploitation and to ensure fairness, especially for vulnerable populations like the people who are being served by HUD. The Doge approach seems to reflect a view that humans flourish with fewer constraints, that overregulation stifles human potential and market efficiency. But what about the people living in public housing? Does an AI trained on regulatory text understand the lived reality of housing insecurity? In terms of social politics, this represents a huge power shift. Traditionally, regulations emerge from a democratically accountable or somewhat accountable when you're several layers down in the bureaucracy process involving public comment and expert input and judicial review. Now we have a private sector AI tool with a young quant at the controls that's determining which rules are non-compliant by some mysterious percentage metric. It's not just tweaking the dials of government, it's rewiring the decision-making apparatus with limited transparency or accountability. So we're either going to get a much-needed efficiency breakthrough out of this or a catastrophic dismantling of protections for vulnerable Americans, or maybe both in different areas. The real metaphysical question is, what reality are we optimizing for? A cleaner regulatory code with fewer words, actual housing incomes for real human beings? And this HUD experiment might actually be the first glimmer of what an AI-run government would look like. If an AI can flag overreaching regulations today, tomorrow it might draft the regulations itself, and it might optimize budgets or even manage entire municipal functions. We're watching the awkward adolescence of algorithmic governance, where humans still need to approve the AI's recommendations, but the direction is clear. The college kid with the spreadsheet is just training wheels for a system that could eventually run with minimal human oversight. What would truly AI-run cities look like? Imagine they would have traffic lights that perfectly optimize flow based on real-time conditions, zoning that reconfigures dynamically based on population needs, and resource allocation that achieves maximum utility instead of serving whoever lobbies the hardest. But there's also a darker possibility. The algorithmic reinforcement of existing biases, efficiency at the expense of human dignity, and decision-making so complex that even the system's own creators can't explain why certain neighborhoods get resources while others don't. The difference between utopia and dystopia might come down to one simple question: who controls the optimization function? And I dealt with this in my episode earlier on cyber Marxism, but really it's who runs the algorithm. That's where the power is. So will it be the people who design the AI governance systems, will include their own values, whether they intend to or not, just as the Doge team's AI reflects their deregulatory worldview? If this is successful at HUD, this AI deregulation approach could spread across government as the article suggests. It might even create the most significant restructuring of the administrative state in generations. The technology itself isn't neutral. The patterns an AI recognizes depend on how it's trained and what metrics define success. If it's trained to prioritize word count reduction over housing outcomes, that's what we're going to get. So what's your take? Is Doge's AI deregulation crusade a brilliant application of technology to cut through bureaucratic bloat and free the housing market from unnecessary constraints? Or is it a dangerous algorithmic chainsaw in the hands of inexperienced operators, potentially demolishing protections for the most vulnerable Americans? Leave a comment below and let me know if you'd trust a college kid with an AI model to rewrite the rules, keeping a roof over millions of Americans' heads. And if you're enjoying this content, I'd appreciate it if you'd push the like button. Pressing like lets me know I'm making content that you want to see, and it spreads that content to others. So thank you for supporting AI Capitalists.